So welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Jenny Hickson and I work with the Criminal Injustice Project with the Texas Civil Rights Project. Travis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Travis Fife. I'm an attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project. And like we said at the start, I know it's weather chaos and life chaos. So we're just really grateful for the time that y'all are spending with us. I know from talking with some of you and also from other folks in Dallas that this is a really pressing issue, and I think it's made all the more pressing reminder today of the weather conditions that can come, and that, like it says on the slide, a lot of folks are really fighting to survive, and the best way to be there for them, I think, is like a really hard problem. And what we're hoping to do today is to talk about that. And sorry, I was already launching in. Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Hey everybody, Christopher Rivera. I am the outreach coordinator for the criminal justice team as well, and thanks for coming out. Appreciate it, but go for it, Travis.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about background today, just kind of like, I know many of you have probably heard that we recently filed a lawsuit against the city of Dallas for a new ordinance that passed, but as is probably obvious to many of you, the lawsuit is just one piece in a much larger, harder problem and puzzle to crack. And so we wanted to talk about kind of the background, how we got here, the lawsuit, and then mostly, and I'm hoping we'll have about 30 minutes. We had some questions for y'all. If folks would feel more comfortable, we could even stop recording, but I am really hopeful that we can kind of solicit feedback and learn from you all. So just taking it by the numbers, and some of you may have participated last week in the point in time count, but as of last year, so when that count was conducted for 2022, there were 4,400 people in Dallas and Collin counties experiencing homelessness. About 1,000 of those were chronically homeless, which is a 89% increase since 2019. And chronically homeless, Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it means for someone who has been homeless for at least a year and has some sort of disability that makes it chronic, or it's very unlikely that without some sort of support, that person is going to be able to get stable shelter and housing. Similarly, rent has increased at the fastest rate since 1986, including rents in Dallas. We get even people that we work with in Dallas who aren't technically homeless by the city's metrics still feel housing insecurity in the forms of rising rents and new developments that are only driving rents higher. And then just the last thing is that this isn't just like a numbers issue. This is a problem that affects a lot of us, or at least concerns a lot of us, that 52% of Americans report worrying a great deal about hunger and homelessness. So this is a pressing issue across the nation, but also in Dallas specifically. And I also just want to, we really wanted to highlight that this isn't just like an economic issue, this is also a racial justice issue. So I don't want to necessarily read to you all of the statistics, but one that really stood out to me is the second bullet point, that According to the city of Dallas, they do those equity indicators. 1.1, there are 1.14 eviction filings per week in majority Black neighborhoods and only 0.24 for majority white neighborhoods. And I think anyone who works in these issues understands the intersection between housing policy, keeping people in their homes, providing stable rent protections, and you know, having large numbers of people who don't have shelter on the streets. And it's, I think, a particularly pressing issue for a city that has outwardly committed itself to racial equity, to monitoring these various indicators. And so we want to really keep that frame in mind. And so, you know, this lawsuit didn't come out of nowhere either. We conducted days and days of outreach to folks who were either living in encampments or, you know, outwardly panhandling or soliciting donations for their survival. And a lot of the things I don't think will surprise you, that many folks are dealing with mental illness, addiction, or a disability that makes steady employment and accessing services all the more difficult. You know, we hear the Office of Homeless Solutions, you know, they'll say, oh, we go out and we conduct outreach and we give these pamphlets. But the issue is that, you know, folks, they either can't afford a bus to get there. It's incredibly hard for them to move because of a disability. I know one of our clients uses a wheelchair to get around. And so there are these structural factors that make even the existing resources inaccessible. And related to that, we heard a lot of complaints from dozens of people about shelters. And that's not to say that shelters are bad in and of themselves. We have tremendous respect for folks who work every day in those services. And many times they can be life-saving, but they also aren't a one-size-fits-all model that, you know, many people, veterans in particular, have PTSD that make those types of confined living spaces really, really difficult and unstable. Many people have dogs that can't go into most shelters. One of our clients doesn't have identification that a lot of shelters provide. And so I think that those comments really underscore that this is a multifaceted problem that requires long-term solutions that, you know, even our crisis response service providers can't always provide. The other thing that we wanted to really highlight here is the role that criminal enforcement plays in folks' lives. So I had a really long conversation with one man who talked about the way that he got these citations for panhandling, for asking for donations, but then couldn't pay it, ended up with an arrest warrant. And so now every time he sees a police officer, he's subject to, you know, kind of constant threats of either being arrested, put in jail, or just generally harassed, even if the police don't have the, you know, don't really want to jail them. And, you know, this extends beyond panhandling to sweeps of people's possessions that we're going to get more into detail now, to, you know, the criminalization of various those kind of features we talked about earlier, mental illness, addiction. If someone is eliciting signs of mental illness, many times people understand that as a threat that can lead to incarceration, citation, or jail time, even though that is much more of a, you know, public health problem than it is a criminal one. And we would be remiss if we didn't just pull this slide from a February 3rd City Council presentation that talked about solutions to the panhandling problem. This was from the city attorney that said that in their experience, the criminalization of panhandling often results in unpaid citations and outstanding warrants and a series of collateral consequences that 2 of our clients have experienced, and many, many other people that we met doing outreach also experience. I want to phrase, oh, Julie, you made it. Excellent. We'll introduce Julie in a second. So the last kind of piece of this is that when we talk about criminal acts, what we're really talking about is a city's decision to make something a crime. There's nothing inherently criminal about sleeping in a tent under an overpass. There's nothing inherently criminal about standing on a median and asking for money. But when we actually look at the reality people are facing, is that these acts are morphed into crimes, and cities across the country, and Dallas included, give a variety of reasons. It's unsafe, it's unsanitary, it's just not great to look at. And I think what that neglects is that there are root social forces pulling these people, whether it be historical racial discrimination and housing and police enforcement, even loan and lending services that have been shown to be discriminatory, whether it's lack of resources for addiction, mental health, or just the struggles of life in our societies can push people out of their homes. And so I think when we talk about this being a criminal act, I think it's important to recognize that that is an affirmative political choice by the city and other policymakers. The other thing that I did talk about, but I wanted to just underscore here, is the Office of Homeless Solutions had said time and time again in city council meetings that they are doing outreach trying to pair people with services. But like I said before, I probably asked this question to, I want to say, like 24 people, and I would say 20 out of the 24 laughed, and the other 4 said that they give like a little pamphlet. And so, I think there's issues of like cultural competency there, of just like, or they're just like not being good answers. Like, I'm not saying that this is wagging the finger at OHS, but I am saying that there is, at the very least, a very significant communication gap, that whatever message is trying to be portrayed isn't being received. And I think the overarching message, it sends it on the slide, is like, if someone's sleeping in a tent or asking for money on the street, I think asking how we punish that person and is the wrong question to ask. And that's kind of the bottom line at the end of the day. And the next slide is actually a recent sweep at Dawson Street. I'm going to let Julie Paramo describe it more in depth, but just to set the stage, we kind of see this as another example of that cycle of criminalization. So Julie is a community organizer and advocate who has been organizing mutual aid work in Dallas for almost 3 years now, and has worked very closely with me in particular in getting me up to speed in different locations, and really centering the experience of people living in these encampments, and has also worked closely with Sandwich Sunday and Food Not Bombs, who do free stores for folks, which again are all the more essential given the weather we're having. So Julie, yeah, do you want to explain what's in these photos, kind of the history of these sweeps? Certainly better than I could.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Travis. Can everyone hear me? Sometimes I have issues with my mic. Okay, great. Yeah, like Travis said, I'm Julie. I've been organizing around mutual aid work with a lot of other dedicated volunteers here in the Dallas area. And sweeps aren't a new thing. This most recent one happened on Friday, and then right before the inclement weather that we're experiencing right now. It's going to be freezing today and tomorrow, and it could ice over, so it might extend into the week. And one thing that's notable is that with this most recent sweep, I think the city, like OHS in particular, has listened to the concerns that people have of like what they were doing before. They reworded the notices that they gave to these camps that they swept on Friday, and made them more detailed, which is something that we had been asking for, and also offered more services to people that they were going to be displacing. So what was that a majority of like the volunteers that service the camps in Central Dallas, there's unhoused people all around Dallas, but we mostly service the people in Central Dallas. And we got word over the weekend that last weekend that Louise and Dawson had noticed that they were going to be swept on Friday. At the time, we didn't know that some of the other camps near Louise Dawson also got notices that same day. Louise Dawson is like probably the most like sizable camp that the community services currently. And then there's about another one that's like a little bit like smaller than them, and then two smaller camps that also got notices. And they were all completely swept on Friday. So what residents told us is that when they came out last weekend to give them the notices, they offered to put some of the names down so that people could go to motels, and from there they would be put at the top of the list that they have for their rapid rehousing program. And so it sounds like they're going to be in these motels or hotels for a certain period of time until they have a housing. And they also offered to put people's items into storage. There's a picture of the notice somewhere, but it's not here right now. And what it seemed like from Friday is that those services were only available to those who were able to sign up that day. So it's like if someone wasn't there or if they like left, they weren't going to get that. So I really don't have the numbers on like who all got that or who didn't. But again, these were like a few different camps that all got swept. So it's still quite a few people being displaced. And once they're like in these motels and hotels, unless they have a phone, they usually don't have a way to get in contact with volunteers who are out there regularly providing aid to them. Another interesting thing that happened was another camp that is near these camps. They picked up the trash bin that they have there, and they like dumped the trash out of the bins and just like took the bins. This other camp, it's been in the news frequently, like from the summer coombs. They didn't get a notice, so it was really strange. from what the residents said, it sounded like the city threatened to like sweep them that day as well, but they didn't end up doing that. Me and some other volunteers went back that night to like check to see that everything that they were going to sweep got swept, and then the camp that they like kind of threatened was still there. And as far as I know, they have not gotten a notice. So yeah, just kind of sound like they have worked to do things to improve how they do this process, but there's still like some disorganization and miscommunication amongst the city and employees. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And I think one other note on the sweeps is, so Jenny, I don't want to steal her thunder, but she is has a training in public health and was, and we've been looking into sweeps as also like a public health problem where, you know, a lot of people establish, you know, they have routines about how they get medicine, how they get medical support when they need it. And when folks are, you know, when their possessions are taken away, and in this case, you know, there's kind of like the good and the bad. The good is that supposedly they're being given lodging and being set up with housing, but on the other hand, they're being removed from the support systems that they have in place. So, and you know, the health routines that they've established and in order to survive. So, really quickly on the median ordinance itself, it emerged in February of 2021, where the city attorney presents and OHS give this presentation on how they want to target panhandling. It gets bounced back and forth between various committees where, absolutely, Lisa. Let us just wrap up the lawsuit piece and then we'll solicit comments and everything. So it bounces back and forth between these committees, and throughout the committees, there's all sorts of disparaging comments about panhandling. So a former council member said that, you know, this is an organized racket of individuals who are doing this for profit, as some sort of company suggested bringing RICO charges against them. You know, Council Member Mendelson said that these are not people who deserve sympathy, or these are not all people who deserve sympathy, and various other references to this median ordinance being about panhandling. As many of you probably know, they tacked on a public safety justification at kind of the twilight hour of the ordinance's consideration. But you know, a little bit of legal context here is that the city has previously lost at least a couple of other lawsuits over the last 15 or so years. Some of you who've been in Dallas longer might remember when they passed an ordinance trying to ban certain food distributions for the homeless, and a federal court slapped that down and said, look, there's no evidence of food contamination or any sort of disease issue here. And so this is kind of part of a longer history of them using public safety to map punishing people who are trying to do what they have to do to survive. And that brings us to the public safety justification. Again, we have this nice quote from, I think he's the assistant, he's somewhere in the police chief, like an assistant police chief, IGO, who presented the police department safety numbers. And this was as of October 26th. So they had 1 out of 45 pedestrian fatalities were from someone stepping off a median. Go ahead, Jenny. And so that is the text of the ordinance. As you can see, it's very long, but the meat of it is subpoint A, that a person commits an offense if they stand or walk on a median that is 6 feet or less, where no median exists, or in a clear zone. And you can see the lengthy description of a clear zone. I'll be honest with you, we've gone back and forth. My understanding of the clear zone is that it applies to, it's 4 feet from the face of a curb if there's no curb, or sorry, if there's no paved sidewalk. And so it would include like anywhere where you have those kind of like grassy patches that, you know, sometimes folks stand on, but the big piece, at least as a we think that there is a big effect of the clear zones on other First Amendment activities, but for purposes of just the panhandling issue, I think it's pretty clear that the brunt of it is the street corners and the medians that could be either clear zones or medians where folks solicit donations. And you know, as Council Member Basil Dua pointed out in one City Council meeting, you know, the courts are not, these are not new court challenges. So the ACLU has sued the city of Albuquerque, Oklahoma City, and then Portland, Maine also had a similar law invalidated. And the big issue here is that the city, Oklahoma City, paid nearly $1 million in legal fees after losing its case on a virtually identical case. So this is not just a you know, burden on people panhandling to survive, but you know, it also could be a very significant burden on taxpayers. And so we filed a lawsuit on behalf of 4 of our clients on December 14th of last year. The legal documents are all available on our website, but the real brunt of it is that it traces the history of this ordinance and its effect on a diverse range of speakers. So we're largely here today to talk about housing and homelessness, but I also want to make very clear that, you know, this isn't just about them. It's also about civil rights groups, religious groups, social justice groups, even, you know, we've even heard from Second Amendment advocates who use these areas to protest about causes that they care about. So we think that the impact of this ordinance could be quite broad, and at the very least could be used against speakers the city doesn't like. I heard from someone in the Dallas Six who tried to stage some protests at the SMU George Bush Library many years ago, and were told they couldn't because of a similar ordinance that, you know, protesters don't really think about all that much until it's used as a threat against them. And the latest update is that we filed for a preliminary injunction on January 6th, and the city requested more time to respond. And so they have until February 26th to respond to that motion. And so without further ado, like I said, I'm 1 minute over our estimate, but thank you, Julie and Jenny, for that's kind of like our little presentation on it. But I know, Lisa, you had one thing and that you wanted to say about the public health issue, but then we also just want to open it up to questions. I know tracking a legal case can be confusing, even if you don't care about the legal case that much and you're interested in the broader issues. So all the questions, and then we have some questions for you all.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. my question is on the health issues, have y'all used this angle? So besides the fact that they put them in those hotels, they made them sign a piece of paper saying they wouldn't drink or drug. And these are people that we see that get their first beer at 7 a.m. in the morning and they drink all day long. And we lost one of our ladies from Hickory a couple years ago, Rhonda. She was a heavy daily drinker and decided to finally get clean. And when she told her boyfriend that she was going to, try to get clean, he didn't give her any beer for 2 or 3 days, and her system shut down and she died. And, we were able to see her. She made it to the hospital. Her family was able to come and see her before she passed, but her body from pulling that alcohol killed her. And, I'm worried about the men underneath the Hickory Bridge because their whole area was, they were part of that on Friday. And, I keep in touch with several of them through another gentleman who used to live there, but we housed him last year. And he said one of the guys, lives in the cottages, and he's been going there on a regular daily basis for the last 5 years, and he's lost. He called Bobby at 5 a.m. He's like, Bobby, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm Sam, I'm sleeping, and he doesn't know where to go. I mean, that was his family that they just took him away from. But I'm more worried about, the fact that how can they force someone to, because that was the old housing first, or that was the old housing way before housing first came about, is that to get housing, you had to sign a piece of paper, you wouldn't drink or drug anymore. And then they were going to give you housing and, but we realized that model didn't work. So then we said, no, we're going to put you in no matter what you have. And then we're going to do wraparound services. Well, we know that wraparound services don't exist most of the time. So neither of those models are working, but I'm more worried about what's going to happen to their health when you force someone to sign a piece of paper saying you will not drink or drug to be able to stay in there. And, can they physically go days without drinking and days without drugging? I mean, that's a big thing there. On the Office of Homeless Solution, when I was on the Citizens Homelessness Commission, because I think you talked about that several different commission bodies have said that, how hard it was to work with the Office of Homeless Solution. They made a presentation to our group first before they presented this to the council. And that was back in 2021, middle of the year, maybe, when they started doing this. I'll look up my presentations and I'll send it to you. It was so crazy. They were trying to say that the panhandling needed to not happen because people could get hepatitis A. That was their big push. And we were like, are you flipping kidding us? Like, that's what you brought to us and you want us to pass that in order to take that to the council. And we're like, that's just crazy. There's nothing that has any merit. And we want to see statistics of how you came up with that. I want how many people have contracted hepatitis A from taking money from someone, so that was, they knew that it wasn't going to pass that, but they had enough. They had Kara Medelson is she's a big advocate for this. And I'm working on a response now to her op-ed that she put out last week, because that op-ed is just crazy, that she's saying that everyone has a choice to go to a shelter. No, they don't. The shelters are full. So, the Homeward Bound's full. All the shelters are full. I mean, they have onesie, twosie, threesies, maybe. And it's she can shout from the mountaintop that this is the solution, but someone's got to correct her and get the right information out, because people believe that kind of stuff when it comes from a council person. And it's crazy. She's not going into these, you know, and the one that's in her district, Family Gateway, when I have to send Ellen Magnus I got another one, I apologize before I ever even send her the information, because I know she doesn't have it. I mean, they are using donor money to put people into hotels right now. They are full. So
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, and I think what I was just going to say is I think that that's the point that we're trying to approach this with, is that people are not, it's two things. One is that the idea that we have sufficient housing for everyone in our current systems is not true anywhere in Texas. And it's not true for even the populations that we say we prioritize, like people that are escaping intimate partner violence. There's not housing for those folks. There's not housing for veterans. So we know that's true. But the second thing is that people are making decisions based around survival, and the purpose of any intervention should be to increase the well-being of all of those folks, not what we know, which is the sweeps hurt people, criminalizing hurts people. None of these things are actually addressing anything that could provide relief for folks. What they're doing is just trying to hide folks away from view. And so I think that's what the purpose of these things is, not necessarily addressing the issues. It's a cosmetic solution to a much more systemic problem. So I think what we were wanting to think about and talk, and sorry, Travis, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, I saw Lavita raise your hand, please.
Hi, Lavita Hamilton with Family Promise of Collin County. We're the second homeless shelter here who houses families. I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit what Lisa mentioned. I also work part-time for Life Path Systems, which is our local mental health authority here in Collin County. Based off of anyone signing anything saying that they will not drink or do drugs, they have to be really careful with that, because just like you stated, Lisa, that young lady that passed away from that, the two hardest things to detox from and you will die from is alcohol and benzos. There's a way that you have to do that. So if they are doing these sweeps and having these individuals sign that paperwork, I mean, to me, I feel like they should have medical staff there to kind of check them out to see what they have going on, because to address any of these issues with the individuals who are unhoused, you have to get to the bottom line. I mean, if there's mental health issues there, but then you're on drugs or your alcohol, you have to treat those drug and alcohol issues before you can get to the mental issues, the mental health issues, and then you start working on how this individual is going to get housed, because you got to clear their head first, and then you have to find out if they want to be housed, and they have to have those wraparound services to go along with the whole process. But Lisa, I'm sorry, going back to what I said with the alcohol, I mean, I just cringed when you said that, because everyone doesn't know that. I mean, I've been in the mental health field for a very long time, but you can't just snatch anyone off of alcohol and benzos. Like their body they'll die instantly. So that has to be, there has to be steps as far as that's concerned. Like I said, maybe if this is going to be something that they do, they should probably have some type of medical staff there to talk to these individuals to see how they can be assisted through that process.
And I wanted to I think that both of those are exactly right. And, just really alarming. And I think we wanted to, is that what you were segueing to, Jenny? Yeah, okay. That we kind of wanted to broaden the conversation a little bit. And Julie, I'll come to you in a second. I saw you going off mute. But, beyond just like these cycles of criminalization, like thinking more about gaps in the system to be aware of, or, we can, if folks are interested in following up on the sweeps thread, we can keep going down that road as well. But also wanted to open it up in case folks had thoughts on other aspects of this issue we're discussing. So go ahead, Julie. I know you had a follow-up to Lavita. Sorry, Lavita, right?
Yes, it's Levita.
Okay, I'm sorry. A long day. Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what Lisa was saying as well. She mentioned the story about a woman named Rhonda. And something that happened recently was something called Camp Rhonda. It was an unhoused camp that was almost kind of like a, I guess the best way to describe it would be like a commune in a way. It was actually like the majority of the people in that camp were people who were trying to stay sober. And you can Google it. This it like, I guess, hasn't existed since 2020. Other than like people who were at this Camp Rhonda, it was like in a certain location, and then they were kicked out by the city. And like I said, there's a lot of articles about this online. If you just like Google Camp Rhonda Dallas, you can find it. So I don't think we have time to get into that, but it's like almost like a case study of I think a more successful time where like volunteers were able to provide aid to these unhoused people, and was I think a big stepping stone in like how mutual aid has changed, and that like the community and service that volunteers provide, like it's become a weekly thing, right? It's become a thing that happens year round. Like there's people right now who are going to go out tonight to go give out donations that they have to people who are out there. And also on the thing about medical services, I've been to a lot of sweeps in the past almost 3 years, and I've never once seen medical services come with the cops and OHS. They're only called if like there's a medical emergency. So that is a really good point to bring up as well. But yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, the community mainly serves those camps in Central Dallas, and on Friday, like they swept the majority of those camps. So it's just an interesting thought that I have, because I don't know, I guess last year they also started to do sweeps in January. They swept Jeffries and Ash, which is where a lot of people who were a part of Camp Run actually ended up, and that camp no longer exists either. But I mean, the other thing is like a lot of people will probably end up back in those areas, Louise, Dawson, Hickory, Baylor, Chestnut, that got sacked. But it'll take a while. Like right now, as far as I know, they're just completely bare. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
I wanted to add one more thing. One of the things that, as a commissioner, that I took from Office of Homeless Solution is they really do not like nonprofits and churches feeding and bringing things. They really want to direct all of people's outreach, money, and food to the if you want to give food, give it to North Texas, food bank. If you want to give money, you can give it to us, Office of Homeless Solution or Housing Forward or whatever. And I don't really understand how they can come in and tell people how they can't go outreach, they can't give food, they can't give, but it's because they don't want these people there. They do want them away. And so I remember when they were trying to figure out a way to stop that. And I was like, how could you possibly eliminate volunteerism? I mean, how can you do that? It's just crazy, but they just want to have such a hand on all of that, who gets what and who gets to volunteer and all that. It's kind of crazy.
And I'll just say, like, the experience of one of our clients, which is, publicly available. He told it in a court filing we made, but is like that this cycle of gaps in services pushes people to, to either sleep on the street or, in his case, panhandle to survive. And he calls it work. He approaches it like a job. And he's told me, I would probably say a half dozen times, he said, I would have a job right now if my ID wasn't suspended. And the reason his ID is suspended is because of a 2020 solicitation citation that resulted in $450 he's still trying to pay off. And in terms of, I just got a question in the chat. Someone asked about signing on as a plaintiff. So I want to take a step back a little bit and just talk about like the mechanics of a lawsuit. So when you file a lawsuit, you you can like you're a little bit, you're not bound by those plaintiffs, but it's not like a class action where you are like, you can either opt out or like there's all these rules around how you can participate. In a First Amendment case, it's actually kind of unique because it's one of the few instances where a court can say, you know what, this thing is so broad that it shouldn't apply to anyone. So in terms of a remedy, it does apply to everyone. But in terms of who's bringing the case, it's just those people who were originally thinking about it, or who originally brought the lawsuit, who were originally like, this is, this is a problem. But in terms of going forward, there are opportunities to get other folks involved if it's strategic for our current clients and it's strategic for those future people. So if you would be interested in getting involved in a legal fashion, whether it's an amicus brief or folks or you yourself would want to be a plaintiff, I'll drop my email in the chat and we can talk about that as well. So I'm just doing that right now, Travis at texascivilrightsproject.org. So thank you for the person who messaged me that. I should have clarified that. And I know we only have about 10 minutes left, but I did just want to say that, and this, this has been wonderful. And I love how engaged y'all are, but we did just want to take 10 minutes to see if folks had discrete issues that they're working on or on their big idea that they dream about to kind of encounter this problem. I know asking like, what would you do about this mess is like a totally loaded question that people far smarter than myself and have been trying to solve. But a lawsuit also brings media attention. It brings the opportunity to negotiate. And so we did just want to kind of open it up and see what ideas are folks sitting on. Yeah, Nancy.
Well, I'm just wondering how we can organize to be calling our city council members and sharing the information that you just gave us. And, if you have sort of a summary of bullet points, what the ordinance is, what the facts are about homelessness, and also if they lose this lawsuit, which is likely, how much it's going to cost us in taxpayer dollars. I mean, I think that we might want to get we ourselves and then others that we know in our districts to call their city council members.
So I love that idea, Nancy. Unfortunately, whether you call city council members is totally your choice. They are represented by attorneys, so I can neither tell you to or anything like that. In terms of organizing ourselves, though, for broader change, what we were hoping to do is, and Chris or Jenny, do one of y'all have the that sign up link? So go ahead, Jenny.
Well, I was just going to say, actually, by signing up for the webinar, we already have you in our system as like folks who are interested in this particular topic. And so we're happy to keep you updated on updates with the lawsuit. Also, keep you updated on opportunities around organizing around this issue. I think, as Travis said, as things unfold, there might be other opportunities for advocacy. And we would want to make sure that we're pulling in all of y'all who are doing this work in the community to do that advocacy and to speak on how these issues are impacting the work that you're doing every day.
I have
And
another question. I
yeah,
have
go
another
ahead.
question. If I hate to dominate, but I am wondering how Housing Forward, responds to the work you're doing, what they think, and whether they're cooperative in any way.
So I'll say two things about that. I thank you for the introduction, Nancy, to Ms. Robinson. I'm meeting with her next week. She's been out the past couple of weeks, and just like the point in time count, like, yeah, we're all crazy busy. And the second thing, though, is there was actually a Dallas Morning News article that covered the sweep at Dawson, and Housing Forward was quoted as, it actually, I don't think it was about the sweep. It was recent. I'm trying to find the link now, but they came out and very strongly voiced opposition to criminalization efforts. And so I think, how to merge our collective power between TCRP and Housing Forward, I think, is an open question that, we hopefully want, we hope to have a big tent and want as much feedback and communication as possible. And the second thing is, actually, yeah, those are both things. So I think there's ideological alignment. We just haven't nailed down the brass tacks. And like Dustin said in the chat, I know I gave a very lawyerly answer when it came to whether to reach out to council members, but we can certainly share a one-pager of information just about the case and the information presented. So absolutely, just like making this information in a digestible sheet.
I mean, I participated in the point in time count, and we were in sort of the lower Greenville area. There were 3 people that we ended up interviewing, and none of them wanted housing. They had gone to shelters, they had had bad experiences. They all were, clearly had a lot of things that, a lot of needs, and that had gone unaddressed for a very long time. And they were chronically homeless, but by choice,
And I kind of, just as an open question to put it back on, I don't, obviously we have our thoughts on that, but I'm curious if anyone else has perspectives or experience kind of navigating what the city's response should be in those circumstances. I'll just say from our perspective then, I think we also have talked to some folks like that. I talked to one veteran who, I talked to one relationship, or sorry, I read that message. I talked to one veteran who said something similar, that he didn't trust the shelters. He didn't feel safe, which, is okay, his choice. People feel unsafe in a variety of different situations, and also just enjoyed sleeping outside. He was a combat veteran and felt safer out there. And I think that, this is one issue where, like Dustin said, that I think the cycle of criminalization and just abandonment can really breed distrust. And, you know, walking up to someone and being like, hey, do you want a house, after, you know, they felt neglected, or do you want to go to a motel, like get in my van? Some people, it might work. Other people, it might not. And I think it only underscores how hard of a problem this is, and why trust between community and policymakers and service providers is so critical and hard to build.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of the approach to the city, I would say, you know, criminalizing it is not going to solve anything. We can make it as rare as possible in the current population, but then what do we do to stem the tide, right? Like, how are we going to provide the services that these people needed 5, 10, 15 years ago that would have kept them off the streets to begin with?
Well, and I think it's like a housing policy choice, you know, like I think like what is so harmful about like criminalization without housing stock, or housing stock that's unavailable, is that it kind of just like, you know, we work on a broad array of criminal issues, and so naturally our instinct and lens is to go to that place. But, you know, I think most of our clients who have been locked up for any point in time say that it just made those, you know, whatever the problem was, it made it worse. And so I certainly agree with you that those root cause, like how do we prevent this, and tenant protections. You know, I was talking with one person who became homeless after their landlord told them like there was a broken pipe. They got into it, like the landlord evicted them because they didn't want to pay for the broken pipe, which is clearly illegal to begin with. But you know, Texas is notorious for landlord friendly laws, and so I think that shouldn't go unnoticed either. And I'm happy to stay on if folks feel more comfortable asking questions in that forum. You have my email. I'm sure there's others of our emails floating around. I'm sure you either have Jenny's email or Chris or mine. So, you know, our inbox is always open. And to Nancy's point about getting together in the future, I think, you know, in terms of next steps, what we'd really like to do is keep learning and like growing our understanding and working together on how to build public consciousness around some of these issues. And so, like I said, our inbox, and then also we do plan to have another one of these in 6 weeks that will be less focused on what is this lawsuit and more focused on like what we can do. And so, you know, invite your friends, invite your neighbors, invite whoever. And we have really, really enjoyed getting to know the wonderful folks in Dallas doing this work day in and day out, and also to the folks on the street, and sending nothing but optimism and solidarity as folks try to stay warm and navigate this crazy weather.
And we just wanted, Dustin very wisely put, if you're interested in following the broader array of criminalization issues, especially as they're going through the Texas Ledge. As y'all know, the Ledge is in session right now. There's a lot of stuff going on that could very well impact the population of folks that are unhoused. We have a Google form that you can sign up. We send out once a week updates of kind of what's happening in the Ledge related to criminal justice issues. You can also choose to do, if you're interested in immigration or in voting rights. So there's a broad array of stuff that TCRP works on, but it's really all around just protecting folks' civil rights in Texas. So,
and I just have to say, I mean, this, you know, using the $3 billion of slush fund to provide property relief to people, you know, again, and pay for these things with, you know, higher sales taxes, that just, you know, it's crazy, right? I mean,
and pay for things with fines and fees. A lot of small rural counties, they just make up the difference in tickets. But anyway, we're 2 minutes over. Like we said, some folks couldn't see it because of the weather. So, thoughts and good energy to all of you. And we will, we'll follow up soon.
Thanks, everyone.